Hey guys, Andy again, spoken label back in the house on a Sunday evening. Yeah. So I sometimes it's good when you've had a nice quiet Sunday. You can just relax and do a bit of podcasting at the end of the day. And when you're doing that, you've got to have a good writer with you. And we've got a very, very good lady writer with me today. I've not spoken to this lady before, but there's people I know that have dealt with her. And it's thank you again to Dean for the recommendation on with Zoe Mitchell we've got today. Dean's a great guy. Got a lot of time for him. And when Zoe kindly sent over Dave's second collection to me, I didn't realise is actually with Animal Heart Press, who have had two of their writers on the last couple of years. Obviously, and one of them was Elizabeth Horan. I think Elizabeth's still involved with the press. And she recommended to me Jessica Kim from a couple of years ago, who was a fantastic young writer. And Jessica is young enough to make both me and Zoe feel really, really old, even though we're not. I think she was 19 or something, or 20 when I had her on Spoken Label a couple of years ago. So but anyway, listen, we're here today, we've got Zoe today and a new collection. Now, Zoe, obviously, people don't know you, first of all. Obviously, you've told me where you're from and you know, Ennisworth, which is near Portsmouth. Have you always been around that way, or have you lived anywhere else before that?
Well, most of my life I've lived down in the south coast, but my parents are from Cheshire.
Oh, oh,
And we moved from Cheshire when I was about two. So I don't really have memories of that. But I guess, so I kind of grew up with northern parents in the south. I don't know if that makes a difference to
yeah.
how I evolved as a writer, but, they're good people right from Cheshire.
Yeah, oh, we are, because like it's very near to where I come from, that John. She's only just up the road, because I'm like in East Manchester, and if you get to Stockport, then you're heading into Cheshire, so that's a couple of miles away. So yeah, rock and roll, all right. Now, obviously, where did your creativity come from originally, if you don't mind me asking, first of all?
I don't know exactly where it comes from. I don't know if anybody does, but I always loved books and I always loved reading. From a really young age, I really loved stories. And I was very lucky because my parents both used to read to me when I was little. And in particular, although my mum did a great job, my dad was amazing at reading bedtime stories, really
Oh,
amazing. So, like,
brilliant.
my dad was a big fan of like the goons and people like that. So he
Yeah,
loved doing
oh, brilliant.
voices. He really threw himself into it. And I think that's where it came from. I used to love listening to my dad reading stories, and I loved the stories, but I also loved the language and the words and how it sounded and how it flowed. So I think that's where it started.
Oh, brilliant. No, you do. Mine are like that because mine started off, and my mum and dad both encouraged me to read all the time when I was about very, very young. I think I freaked him out because I'd read to Stephen King when I was 9 and 10. So,
I was sort of similar, those big fat books, and it did come from. So my dad read a lot of like sci-fi and fantasy, and
yeah,
they're always like those big fat paperbacks. And I used to be envious when I was younger. So yeah, the quicker I could get to those, the better.
yeah, same for me. You didn't want to stick with just 100, 50-page, 100-page books. You want to go into the 1200 and
Yeah,
1300 page.
get
Yeah,
stuff.
get into the good juicy ones, as I always say. Definitely with that. So now, obviously, in relation to yourself, then I believe you hold an MAN, don't you, in creative writing at University of Chichester, which I've got a
Yes.
friend of mine who did that same degree a couple of years ago, actually, where you earned this distinction, didn't you? And the Kate Betts Memorial Prize. Now, I want to learn about the Kate Betts Memorial Prize first of all, and what happened here.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say what happened in that. So the prize is for the best work in the year, and I think it's a bit of a strange prize. I mean, it's a huge honor to be given it, but I don't know how you decide what the best work in the year is. And particularly in the Chichester course, it's not a course of poets. So I don't even think you can rack all the poets next to each other and choose who's the best. I don't think art works that way. But in the case of Chichester, that's also novelists and short story writers and playwrights all doing the same course in the same way. So I think maybe it just comes down to marks in the end. But I wasn't really chasing the marks, so it was a huge surprise, a huge honor. Um, But yeah, so that's how it came about.
No, it's best way. Sometimes like it's always like it's if it's a really nice surprise. I think it means more to you a lot sometimes, doesn't it? So because it catches you out. No, I get it completely. Are you still doing a PhD in creative writing at the same university?
No, I finished that now.
Ah, no, that's tough information I've been told there.
That's fine. Yeah, no, I'm officially a doctor, which
Oh,
I also did at Chichester because they're an amazing university for creative writing. They've got some amazing tutors and really supportive. So yeah, so I did my PhD there. It took me about 4 years, and I did that alongside working full time. So that's a pretty good clip for a PhD.
well, I couldn't do it, to be honest with you. I think my head would be fried by the end of that, let alone after a year of it, let alone four. So good grief, well done. Now, eagle-eyed people, and you were very good. You sent me this link. It makes always makes life easier. When I was, you know, you've had a piece published, haven't you, in the Guardian, which I think it's first of all it's some going, but it's a some going poem. I know it's from you. I think it was from your first book, wasn't it, Hag? So tell us about when you knew about this then. And please tell me you knew about this more than the day before it came out.
Yes, no, I did. So this is again, I mean, and I guess all credit to the university and one of the tutors at the university, Dr. Naomi Foyle, who was my PhD tutor. And I wrote most of Hag was written, including that poem, was written while I was doing the MA. And then it came out when I started doing my PhD, and she knows Carol Rumens, who decides the Guardian poem of the week. And she said, "Oh, I'm going to send Carol your book." And I went, "Okay, that's fine. Have a copy." I mean, I kind of thought you're just sending it into the universe. It's fine. I didn't wait on it. Um, but then Carol came back and she really wanted to publish Sycamore Gap, which I was pleased with because it's one of my favourites from that collection. And then it's taken on a life of its own for unfortunate reasons, but at the time it was and I think it still is actually my most rejected poem, in that I
Oh,
have my
wow.
spreadsheet, as I'm sure all poets do, and it was rejected over and over, I think like 12 times or something, from various journals because it's a bit weird. So then I thought, well, the Guardian knows what's up, so
Yeah,
that's fine if the Guardian
yeah.
likes it.
As I would say, it's too weird for 12 other journals, but not weird enough to get rejected for the Guardian. You can't beat that. Indeed, so brilliant. Okay, now obviously, yeah, we'll talk about. Obviously, I've read your first poetry book already, Hag, and people are wondering. Yes, I found this actually in Manchester Poetry Library, which I know made Zoe's day when I sent her a picture of it because I was a bit taken back. That's why. But it's a tremendous book, Hag. I really, really enjoyed this. But I'm not going to go into this in a massive depth. But obviously, I know you were a joint winner, weren't you, of the Indigo-First Collection Competition, leading to Hag. So tell us a little bit about the background about Hag then.
Well, so as I said, a lot of the poems in there
Mm.
are from the MA that I did. So the way that the MA is done, it's themed in different areas just to focus on different things. So in Hag, there's a lot of inspiration from classical poetry, which was one of the kind of modules that we did, all about sources and artistic sources. So a lot of them were from there. But the title poem actually came from a night out with Dean. So we went to London and met in London, had a few drinks, went to a poetry reading, and I just had a lot of fun. And I was on the train home drunk and really happy with my life. Just like, oh, I love that I'm in a place where I can just go to a poetry reading and meet a stranger and it's all well. And I was just really happy and struck with the fact that, when you're as you get older as a woman in particular, you're kind of told, oh, you're on the shelf, you missed your chance, yeah, you didn't do what you're supposed to do. And I was just really happy. So I started typing a poem in like an email on my phone. Not the final poem. I'm not that good that I can write something drunk and it comes out in a book, but I wrote
No.
the idea in an email. And the reason that I really loved it was I sort of did that and then forgot about it, went home, crashed out, woke up the next day. And of course, I'd sent myself an email while I was hungover that just said Hag in big letters in the subject.
Oh.
I was like, thanks, past me.
Oh.
Um, so I loved it, but it's a lot about, so even though in places it's quite dark, it's quite joyful collection, or I think it is, and it certainly was for me to write, because when I started the MA, I started it to see if I could do it, to see if they would accept me on the course, to see if my poetry would be good enough. And so it's really joyful to kind of hit your stride, I think.
Yeah, I think what I've really liked about this book and also your other book, Untold Fortunes, we're going to come on to in a moment, is the fact is you can tell like you've lived these books. Because I've come across
Mm.
writers, you can tell they've knocked it out for 6 months and not really thought about it. Yours, I think this probably took you 4 years to write. And Untold
Mm.
Fortunes, you'll tell me in a second, I think was a long, even longer bedding in process. Is that the case where was it? The book itself just
Yeah.
didn't it came at its own pace, I think, didn't it really?
Yeah, it does. I think yes, probably it's probably about 5 years for Untold Fortunes, and a lot of life in there. Not just from the PhD and the research and the work that I was doing on that side, but on the personal side as well. A lot happened, and my mum was unwell, and COVID happened in the middle of it. So that, I don't write about COVID, but all these things happen while you're working, and I think they just bleed into it, and I think it makes it for a better poem. I certainly know when I was younger and I first tried to write poetry, I didn't write very good teenage poetry, but that's because when you're a teenager you don't know anything, and you don't know that you don't know anything, so you just write grand statements that have got nothing inside them. And now I kind of try and focus on what's real.
Yeah, it shows with your work, honestly. That's why, because this Hag is a tremendous book for that because it breathes a lot. But like I said to you, that's what we're not here to actually talk about that book today. But I can and do recommend it. But like I said to you, like I did find obviously Untold Fortunes, which I want to ask you a few questions about now. I think this continues the journey on from the first book. And it gives people are wondering, it gives a lot of voice to mythological and historical women, which have obviously been silenced or vindicated. And it's a fascinating book. The new one is completely. Did you find when you were writing Untold Fortunes, did you realise it'd be coming on the journey from Hag in a different way?
I don't think not. I didn't sort of consciously make that decision, I don't think. But I guess I mean I love history and mythology, and that's present in both books. So I suppose it's just that little part of me. So I wasn't really thinking of it as like, what do I say next, or how do I evolve on from Hag? So my PhD was about women and witches in women's poetry. So that's what I was looking at, kind of how the figure of the witch is portrayed by great poets like Sylvia Plath or Anne Sexton or Audre Lorde. Like I looked at all these poets and what they did with the witch and thought, what can I do with that? Because also the witch myth, it goes across pretty much all cultures and all eras. So there's a lot you can play with that.
Yeah, no, excellent stuff indeed. No, I agree with you. Not. Did you find then, obviously, so you do talk about a lot of research, and it shows in both of your books. How did your research compare between book one and two? Did it become easier to do your research for book two because you think you probably had more of an idea which direction you wanted to go?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, so while I was doing the MA, I was learning, as much as I was learning to write, I was learning about how I write and what I do. And a lot of what I did in the MA was go and visit places. So in Hag, there's quite a few poems which were inspired by the Northeast. And the reason it's the Northeast is because one of my best friends in the world lives in Newcastle, so I would go and visit her. And like go to these places. So there was no like real scientific reason for that region, or just where my friend is, and I do love it for that reason.
Let's call it coincidence, all right?
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's great joy, and everything that's happened with Sycamore Gap since, I do feel it kind of belongs to my friend Nisha as well, because she drove me there, she took me there. So yeah, so I think I did a lot more kind of actually being in a place with the first one, but with the second one, it's maybe more academic, but also more ambitious. So I didn't want to just write about places that I've been to. I wanted to write much broader than that. Um, but that means you can't then just exist on like the vibe that you get in a place. You have to sort of engage your imagination and read quite widely around it. And the big challenge then, or the big challenge for me, and I'm not sure I always achieve it, but I always try to, is to try and not show all your research. So you're not trying to explain everything that you've read and, explain, look how clever I am. I don't think that's really the role of the poem, but to try and get that energy of whatever you've learned into the poem.
Yeah, I think it shows a lot in your books, the thought that's gone into it. Because like people know if they read both of these books, many of the women in your books are drawn from myth or history. The first book you've already explained already. Was there any sort of idea for the selection process in the second book?
Um, Yeah, well, the order of the book, I suppose it all comes from the order of the book. So the book is divided into phases of the moon. And so then from all the poems that I wrote, I kind of aligned very loosely, but each section aligns with that phase of the moon. So that's kind of how it was done. But also in terms of like what I chose, I wrote a lot more than is in the book, and some of them just weren't good enough. Often in my opinion, they weren't good enough in relation to the women. So like I tried for about 3 years to write about Hedy Lamarr, because she's
Oh,
such an incredible figure, and brilliant actress, beautiful woman. The reason that we can have this conversation right now is Hedy Lamarr. And I never wrote anything that did her justice. So she doesn't make it in the book, not because she's not good enough, but because unfortunately I'm not good enough yet to do her justice.
yeah, that's an interesting idea that we're saying there because I know my second poetry book, which came out just over 10 years ago, that took me 5 years to write. And I reckon you probably did the same as I did, where I wrote about 60 odd poems in the book. I wrote over 200. So I was rejecting absolute loads. And it feels like with both your books here, that's what you've done. And I thought that makes sense straight away with it. Now, the book itself has got really, really good lyrical beauty in this book, but also the emotional violence as well. And there's a real contrast in the way you do this, and not a lot of writers got to get this book like this. Did you find did his style change over was it 5 years you wrote this book, do you think, in hindsight?
Um, I don't know. I don't know if it's just my style, or I mean, it must have evolved. It must have changed, and certainly studying great female writers, it certainly does. I think I maybe got a bit braver and a bit tougher, over the 5 years. But I don't really know in terms of the evolution, because a lot of what I write is just how I see things. Um, and I think, a lot of women carry a lot of anger, and I'm right at that age. I am right on the cusp of 50, and, well, there's a whole TV series about it now, isn't there? Right, Women, the Sally Wainwright TV series.
I've got to
There's a
watch
lot.
that yet. I believe it's really good, actually, that, yeah.
It's really good. Yeah, yeah. And this is the thing, there's a lot of anger in women, and I think there's a lot of unexpressed anger in women. But also there's historically a lot of violence against women. And I wanted to be clear that, you can't just glorify witches, because women were tortured because of the witch, and it was real torture, not a Twitter witch hunt, a real witch hunt with real consequences. So I think the violence kind of had to be in there to to show your respects to that.
Yeah, I think you've done a good job of it. And it's not the case of you preaching with your poems. You're not. You've been very, very skillfully wrote that. And I think shows, throughout the book, there's a tenderness with it as well. And it's one that you've got to reread it several times. And I read about half a dozen times when I got out of the library. I've read the current one about 8 times so far, and there's more still unfolding with it. And that's clever writing, no two ways about it. Now, people know when I get asked to read new books like my poets, I always pick out a few poems I want to ask them about. And I've always just I've already just told Zoe about these about 10, 15 minutes ago before we started recording. So this is why I put her on the spot now. It's like mastermind time now, isn't it, Zoe? So
It is, yes. Well, I'll take a quick look while we're talking. I mean, I will know what they are, but
yeah, and I like doing it this way because it shows how some of the writer thinks for the pieces, and this is why I'm waffling for a minute while somebody gets prepared.
got it.
Quickly,
All
go.
right,
You got
I've got it. Yeah.
it. Brilliant. Now, obviously, I wanted to talk first of all about the first poem in the book, New Moon, and I love this piece because it felt to me that it's aside which has also been a great first poem for the book, and it is, but it feels like there's a lot of change forthcoming in this poem. And I think that's a clever way of leading into the book because the book's talking a lot about change throughout of it. Now, two questions on here, if you can really can do both of them. Is first of all is what made you want to start the book with this poem and why this poem?
Well, I mean, when I was writing, I didn't think I've just written the start of my book there. I didn't really write it that way. So New Moon, and in fact, all the moon phase poems were one of the weird experiments that I did as part of my PhD, which in this case, what I did was I made a note of the phases of the moon like coming up. I just made a note of those dates and I didn't look up what they mean because each phase of the moon has a different meaning and has a different connection with people in witchcraft and in life or astrology or whatever. But I didn't look any of that up. I just noted the dates. And on those dates, I just wrote whatever was on my mind, just, about 5 pages of waffle and nonsense. And then when I'd done that for a whole month, I went back and edited those into poems. And
Wow.
after that, I then looked up what they meant. And spookily, they all aligned really well. So I didn't have to further edit very much to then get them. So whatever truth there is in the moon is absolutely there. So I think what's in the poem is what's in the meaning of new moon. And it was one of those experiments I have done, well, for both books, but especially for Untold Fortunes. I do a lot of like weird experiments where I try and do all these different things and they don't always work. So when I wrote it, I just thought, could I do something with phases of the moon? And then when they were all done and they worked so well, I thought that makes a nice structure for the book. So New Moon just inevitably became the start because that's the start of the cycle.
I thought so. I thought so because I always saw a new moon. Yes, beginning of the moon. Yeah, and I got that makes sense to me completely. I really liked as well first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And this for a different reason, because there's a big implied for me, and there's a feel of resistance in this one. And I thought it was like you can tell me more in a minute. There was a feeling out of like not prepared to accept way life's been handed down to you, and you're fighting back in having a resistance way. But where did this piece come from?
So this would have been almost exactly that, probably having a bad day or probably having a run of bad days. But I'm not a very good miserable poet because I get very bored with that kind of melancholy, feeling sorry for myself. Some people can write whole books on it, and I just can't. I haven't got the patience because I start to fight. I start to get angry and try and fight back against it. So I think that's what that's about. Like you have these bad days or the world is against you, but that doesn't mean you don't try, and you've got to try and do something. So yeah, that's really where that came from. And again, that it does align with the first quarter and starting to take action and to make change and to like affect any change that's happening. So yeah, it's kind of, I guess, probably my life mantra. Like when you don't like something, just go and
Yeah,
make a
no.
change or take a leap. You never know, it could be a disaster, but at least you've done something.
Yeah, no, I agree. It contrasts some of your poems, but this is a very, very personal poem, this one. And I got that, I guessed that straight away with that. Now, you do throw some surprises in the book sometimes when you do a location poem. And I actually knew this one because I studied it at school when I did GCSE history back in the 80s. Oh, yeah, it was Chanterbury Ring. Obviously, I
Yes.
know. I think it's West Sussex way, if I remember
It
correctly. I
is,
suppose.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's pretty near me, Chanctonbury Ring, and originally it came from kind of local legends. So there's lots of legends about Chanctonbury Ring, that it's haunted, that the devil walks there, that witches used to live there. There's like it's very rich. You could probably write a whole book about Chanctonbury Ring, to be honest. And I went there because it's near enough to visit, and it's just a beautiful place. It's just really beautiful. So you have all these stories. And when I went back, I thought all these stories are male ghost hunters who go there in the middle of the night saying, oh, it's a spooky place, or it's haunted, it's haunted. And I thought, oh, it's just lovely up here, a bit of peace and quiet. So that was sort of what inspired it. I guess and sometimes maybe those legends protect you a little bit if you just go in there and think, oh, it's actually okay here. It's actually pretty good. I didn't spot the devil or anything like that, so that was
Yeah.
fine.
No, no, I get it completely with that. You do get everywhere you go, you get ghost stories and stuff. Because we did a ghost walk near where we live actually, and last Saturday just gone, and it was brilliant because we went into an old cinema that's been shut for 30 odd years, and we didn't feel it at all. But I know someone else stood next to us, back of us, was shivering for all the time, and it's like it seems to affect people different ways sometimes. So no, I get it completely right. Right, excellent stuff. Okay. Well, that's pretty well close covered all my questions now. So we're going to have a couple of bits and pieces to wrap up with. But obviously, what I know you, Zoe, you're probably working on your third collection at the moment, aren't you? I presume. Probably quite taking your time with it again.
Yes.
But,
Oh, it's going to take even longer. I think I've set myself a big job.
mm.
So,
Oh, good grief. Is there anything you want to reveal about it so far then? Even though I think it'd be in
uh,
the early days.
well, it's early days, but what I'm really interested in is cults. So
Oh, oh.
I'm kind of moving away from mythology a little bit, but I'm really fascinated by cults, and I think the reason I'm so fascinated is cults and their use of language, and also what's happening in the world today, where you get almost mini cults. I mean, this is slightly my conspiracy brain, but things like if you know people who are into CrossFit or park run, it's like they're in a cult. They're so obsessive about it, and everyone's got very tribal on the internet. Everyone's very tribal, and so that's really what I want to write about, this kind of tribal world that we're living in now, and how dangerous that is, and how that aligns with cult. I'm not implying, by the way, that like people who do park run are as bad as
No, of
as kind
course.
of Charles Manson, but the similarities between them, and how at the heart of that, it's all about language. When a special language is created, special words are created for things, where you put some people in one group and some people in another. So that's really what I want to write about, and I think I've given myself a hard job, because
Yeah.
that's a very
Well,
hard thing to get right. um, but that's really what I'm most interested in, and I think what's most important, poetry is a very flexible medium, and we have to do something to flex our language, because at the moment you can have two people talking to each other and they're not really talking the same language. They're not actually having a conversation, they're just shouting at each other. So I feel like poetry is maybe a way to kind of stretch and kind of investigate that a bit more.
I think it's an excellent approach. That I'm always a believer with poetry. You've got to be constantly pushing yourself forwards anyway. And I think you've done the right thing there because the two books you've done, I think you probably took that as far as you can. Actually, I think to be honest, with you,
Yeah.
and it's that because they feel like it's one book entry and spread into two, or across two to me actually. But no, fair play to you and good luck with that. So straight away, keep us informed. So okay, where can people get hold of your new book then?
So my new book, Untold Fortunes, is available from Animal Heart Press. So the best place to go is the Animal Heart Press website.
Brilliant. Is Hack still available nowadays in press?
That's less available, I think, because it's quite a while ago.
Yeah,
I still have some copies kicking around. So if anybody hears this and they are interested, reach out to me on Instagram and we could sort something out. I can send one over or something.
brilliant. Obviously, last bit is social media plugs. Where can people find you?
So probably Instagram's about the only one that I do, with any regularity anyway. So that's Writing by Zoe, all as one word.
Brilliant. Brilliant. No, good stuff indeed. And good luck with the books. I know it's been out fairly recently because people are wondering. I was talking to Zoe in some depth before about your online launch, weren't you, as well?
Yeah.
So very quickly before we move on to your reading side of it, how did your launch go? I know you had two very good writers with you, Dean Rettrick, who I know, and Kate Garrett, who I want to get on Spoken Label sometime when I have the guts to contact her.
But I'll tell her. I'll tell her to speak to
Yeah,
you.
yeah, drop her a message. But
Well, I'll
always
suggest. I can't
recommendation
tell
always
her anyway,
works.
but I will suggest to her because she's a wonderful writer and creative person. And yeah, it's definitely worth speaking to her. She's someone I admire hugely.
Yeah. It's like, how have you found it on doing online launches? It's like, it's a different sort of challenge, isn't it, race to doing like in-person launches. And I've done both now and they're not easy.
Yeah, it's hard. In some ways, I mean, I get nervous with all readings. I don't have whatever gene it is that loves the spotlight. I missed that one, unfortunately. So I get nervous for all of them. I think in person, you can get the energy and you can kind of get that sense of whether people are following you and whether they get it or not. And I've had a couple of times where probably that's not a good thing because they haven't liked what I've read. So it's
Ah,
not always worked out for me then. But then, yeah, I think that's the problem with online launches is that you don't really get that sense of how people are doing. If they're interested, should you keep going? Are you waffling too much? Should you say more? Should you say less? All of that is much harder, and I can't really. Maybe because I'm nervous, I don't really split my attention. So at the online launch, there were some lovely comments coming through, and I didn't look at any of them because I thought I'll just get confused or I'll start reading the comments instead of my poem. So I'll just ignore it until the end. But yeah, it is a challenge. But then it's nice to be able to do that with me and Kate and Dean in 3 different places. So bringing together writers that you wouldn't normally see together because geographically we're not that close. And to get it out to more people that way. So there is good about it, but it is a challenge for sure.
yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. So, have you got any more readings planned? Have you coming up, Zoe, or anything?
No, no more at the moment. I
As
need to some.
let's leave it at this end. You're open to offers, as I was saying,
Oh,
then definitely.
absolutely. Yes, yes. It
Book me.
terrifies me, but I say yes every time and then I worry about it. Rather like the poem of just like go for it, you'll figure it out. So when I'm asked to do anything, I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. Like during my PhD, there's a witchcraft museum in Cornwall, and I ended up presenting a session about creativity and witchcraft, and reading some poems. And I agreed to do that with absolutely no idea in my head of even how I would get to Cornwall because I've got a rickety little car that thankfully made it all the way there and back. But I
Oh
just went,
wow,
yeah, that'd be great. Witchcraft Museum, got to go there. So just yeah, I'm open to offers.
please, hey, get in contact with Zoe. Honestly, people, I recommend it after this book. So, right, we'll wrap up there, Zoe, and we'll let you take a deep breath, and you can come back and bang us with a couple of poems from the book. So, it's been great fun. This, thank you. I've thoroughly
Yeah, it's
enjoyed
been
this.
really nice talking to you. I was so nervous about this, and you've made it so pleasant.
Oh,
So thank you.
I always tell everybody, and I'll wrap up Zoe very quickly, is because I've been doing this so long now, it's 10 years in January 2006, January next year, no, 26. You get to the stage where you learn how to listen to people. And like, when you're really enjoying the book like I have, it shows, I think, sometimes. So, but thank you, Zoe. Right, we'll take a quick break, folks. And back in 2 shakes. So.